and welcome everyone to day 2 of the 5-day She Has Infinite Potential Panel Summit. I am so happy to be here today. Happy to welcome you. Happy to welcome Dr. Farzana and Chloe. We have some amazing content for you guys today. She Has Infinite Potential panel is made up of 9 amazing women, and we are on day 2 of our 5-day summit, just talking about some of the most critical aspects to professional women. And today we are going to be talking about imposter syndrome and moving past that myth. Okay, that is a myth, and we are going to bust that myth because we have so much potential and we're not going to keep holding ourselves back. So if you feel like you have imposter syndrome, drop a me in the chat, because I know I've experienced it before, right? Like, let's just be honest. Okay, drop a me in the chat if you've ever felt like you are just not in the right place. You're questioning yourself. You're like, are they going to realize that I don't belong? This is for you today. We made this especially for you today, and I'm so happy to have you here. My name is Malia. Welcome to the ship. I am your captain for today, and today we have 2 panelists, Dr. Farzana and Chloe. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves so that wonderful people attending know what brilliance they're sitting in front of today.
Farzana,
Dr. Farzana, let's start with you.
Malia, this is such a great initiative, and it is my honor to be here with Chloe and discussing the imposter syndrome in women. My name is Dr. Farzana Chauhan, and I have an evolutionary leadership journey. It started in architecture, worked in healthcare architecture, and if you remember, architecture is and was a male-dominated profession. There are more women in school and everything else, but not enough in leadership roles. So my advocacy is about enhancing and recognizing women leaders in non-traditional fields of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and many more. And I help them in identifying who they are, where they are, and how to navigate the landscape of difficulties and barriers, finding the way outward. I have written a book on leadership in women, and I run that advocacy platform, and I am an advocate for optimizing human excellence.
Wonderful. Oh my goodness. Sitting at the feet of brilliance, Dr. Farzana, thank you so much for being here. Chloe, please introduce yourself so the people know who you are as well.
Happily. Hello, everyone. My name is Chloé Nwangwu, and my peers call me the brand scientist. And that's because I use behavioral psychology to ensure that under-recognized leaders like you get the attention and recognition your work deserves. My research has demonstrated empirically that the visibility game is rigged to keep certain kinds of people under-recognized and overlooked. And so my job is to make you as impossible to ignore as I can.
Undeniable. Just the brightness in the room. I love it. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Malia Lim. I am the founder of Savvy Leader and She Has Infinite Potential panel. Welcome to the ship. I am your captain for today. So today we're talking about imposter syndrome. And I'm going to be honest, I experienced this just a little bit. I know that this is something that women are experiencing a lot more than I have personally. So I'm so excited to have you guys here to share some wealth and some knowledge about this. And we were talking before, and Chloe and Dr. Farzana, you guys mentioned that this is something that Harvard Business Review put out an article about. So like we're not making this up, right? Harvard Business Review mentioned that imposter syndrome is something that we have to stop telling women that they have, and we have to stop projecting this onto them. So with that, let's start with our first question. I want to know, what are women doing? What are the folks tuning in that are saying me? Because I see the me's in the chat. What are they doing now that is not working for them as far as imposter syndrome goes? Let's start with you, Chloe.
Ooh, good question. Okay. Well, I think the first thing is that, and this isn't something that's limited to women, but it is something that's encouraged in women, is the idea that imposter syndrome can be fixed just by, fixing our confidence or whatever it happens to be, right? Like fixing something internal to us. That's something that we are attempting to do. And it's not working, right? Like we're still in this same place where people are talking about the confidence gap that women have. They're talking about that being the reason that there aren't as many women in leadership, blah, 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 blah. When really behavioral science 101 tells us that in order for behavior change to stick, the environment around you has to change so that it can sustain that change, right? So even if we weren't, addressing the ways in which imposter syndrome is super sus for blaming the victim, right? Even if we're not talking about that angle, just from the angle of what behavior change science tells us, we know that focusing on in here alone or just dropping information is not enough to get the change to stick. It's not effective enough. So that's one thing that I would say.
Yeah, it's like, lift yourself up by your bootstraps. Just get confident, right? Yeah. Like, oh, okay, sure. I didn't think of that, right? Exactly. Tell us what are women or what are people doing now that is not working for them for imposter syndrome?
So I'll tell you with the lived experiences and the research I have done, especially on women-to-women mentoring. Women, when they come into male work environments, they are told and they are trained to masculinize themselves to fit in. I know the story in architecture. You give up your colors, your jewelry, and everything else. That's an external masculinity you give up, but internally you have to become aggressive. You have to be more assertive. And when women are more aggressive and assertive, they are called other names. So when you try to fit in through adapting the masculinity mindset of the profession or the industry, that's where it has not been working and it is not working. What can we do? That is the next question we will get into. But remember who you are, because forget about the external and internal dynamics which they tell you make you fit in, but be yourself, what your competencies is, what your brains are, because you are in engineering or technology or science because you have those competencies. So focus on that, and then all the behavioral science comes into play. But what we are doing now is you are trying to masculinize yourself and become someone else. In that process, it is not working.
Yeah. Wow. I love that you really focus on, like, it's almost like a survival technique for women. And when they go into these spaces, they're just like, okay, the people who are successful or who survive, they are masculine. They have these traits. And so that's what I need to improve on, which makes sense. But we're losing the value that we bring to the table, our unique value as women. And as professionals, like you're saying, Dr. Farzana, we know science, we know technology, we have just as good a brain as they do. And so when we're losing focus on what we have and we're focusing on trying to fit a mold that is not meant for us, that's when we're really seeing a lot of these personal issues, and they call it imposter syndrome. I love that. Yeah.
And if I could add, I'm sorry, I know we want to book it because we have so little time, but if I can add, visualize it this way, right? There's this concept of the mythical norm. It's something coined by Audre Lorde, and it's the idea that normal, the normal perspective or the normal kind of body or person in our society is white, male, able-bodied, thin, well off, right? All of these things, right? And that everyone else is some deviation from that norm, right? So when you think about it from that perspective, you realize that you will never out man, out white, out rich, out thin, out whatever it happens to be, the person who's actually meets that mythical norm standard, right? So when people are comparing you, right, and you're trying to assimilate to be more like this mythical norm, you're always going to be found wanting, always.
I'm so glad you added that piece, because go ahead, Dr. Farr.
I also want to add one thing, because all this masculinization in last 30, 40 years, brings you into that industry, technology or science, technology or engineering. But if you look at the studies done by McKinsey more recently, the top leadership is still falls for other gender because of the mindset. I have written an article which is available on LinkedIn also, that it will take in architecture, it will take 200 years to come to the same percentage of top leadership in architectural firms where the women students are. Women students are over 50%, and the top leadership is at 8 to 10%. And yes, so we have a lot of work to do,
Wow.
not just internally, but externally also.
200 years. I'm not waiting that long.
Absolutely not. No.
200 years just to get a fighting chance at being great. You know, I love that you guys are really focusing on the fact that imposter syndrome seems to be a symptom of external, right? Like
Yes.
the society is telling us you have to fit this mold. We want these other people. This is the standard of success, and this is what's valued. And so we as women, we're trying, but we could never be. We could, or 200 years later maybe, but we could never.
No guarantees. No guarantees. It's just an estimate, correct?
Optimistic.
And I was generous enough that because according to my calculation, it was 400 years. I just brought it down that we are actually going to make a progress at a rapid speed. Correct? And it is through the research done by American Collegiate School of Architecture. You just have to add up numbers.
Yeah. It's and I want to add one point before we move on to the next question. I spoke at a conference in November, and the organizer, her name is Erica, fantastic woman. She was telling me that it's not imposter syndrome, it's imposer syndrome. It's everyone else imposing their expectations and their what they're like expecting, what they want you to do. They don't see the value in you, so they're imposing that on you, and that is what's making you question yourself. I've always known I was great, but every time I go into a meeting, this guy is questioning my decisions, and now I go back to my office like, well, do I really know? Because they're imposing that on you. It's the external environment. Right.
Yes.
And so
that self-doubt is created.
I have so many things to say. Yes. I have so many things to say. Go to the next question so I can say
the next question. All right. So we're going to the next question just for the sake of time. I think we might put in the chat, guys. Do you want us to do a full workshop on imposter syndrome? Let us know in the chat. Okay. Because we're here to serve. And if that's something that you guys want to see, we will do that. But what can people listening today, what can they do to move the needle forward and make progress this week as far as climbing themselves out of the hole of imposter syndrome? Because we're saying things, but they are still feeling it. So what can they do? Let's go, Dr. Farzana.
Sorry, Chloé, but two things which have worked for me and for others also. First of all, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself and your capabilities. What that little voice says, which gets drowned out by external factors, keep that in mind. But and more importantly, create a network of mentors, a constellation of mentors, just not one mentor in your organization or in your field. My research, my doctoral research on women-to-women mentoring is not just about women-to-women mentoring. It's about mentoring. What are the different types of mentoring? And you have to create that whole network. I call it a constellation of mentors around yourself, so that whenever you have a question or an idea, both ways, go and talk to the specific person or a specific group. This panel, the 9 women who came together in a very short span of time, that is the constellation of mentor network. Okay, it is amazing, and so those are the 2 things I think to move the needle forward. Start from yourself, create that environment, that context for both internal and external growth, and then bring it into where you want to go.
I love that. And can I just put a little point? I love that you call it a constellation, because it's like when you feel like your light is dimming, your star is not as bright, you can surround yourself with other bright, brilliant stars, and it will help lift you. I just love that. Like, look, I got a little bit of goosebumps. Like, I just love that the constellation visualization of it. I think that's brilliant. So Chloe, tell us from your behavioral science point of view, what can we be doing this week to move ourselves out of imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Okay. How much time do we have? Because
Okay,
there are. So okay.
give me two. Give me top two.
Oh no. Okay, that's not enough. Okay, you just stop me. I'm gonna go and you stop me. Okay, and I'll go from easiest to most complicated. Maybe that'll be best. Okay, so first thing that I suggest, start being really intentional about the language that you use when you are referring to yourself and people who are like you. So, for example, I don't say underrepresented, I say underrecognized. And that's a very intentional choice because research has shown us that underrepresentation is actually a symptom of being underrecognized. Great example of this is a recent study, I want to say it was 2021, that empirically demonstrated something called the racial attention deficit. And what that showed us is that white Americans are 33% more likely to overlook their Black peers. And that's even when they've been incentivized to pay attention to them. And on top of that, when they know that that peer has information that can help them with the problem that they have. So when those two things are met, those two conditions are met, there's still a 33% gap in terms of recognition, right? And as women in tech, we all live on that spectrum of being underappreciated or underrecognized. So what I'm telling you is that it's a literal cognitive bias, right? Like it's a thing, a shortcut, a way that the brain works that intentionally invisibilizes you, right?
Wow.
And so if you bring attention to that with your language choice, that's going to start triggering change and recognition in folks. It's really small. But it's effective.
So instead of calling yourself underrepresented, right? As in like nobody's helping me, like I can't be seen, right? That's almost like a victim point perspective. You're saying I'm undervalued. And that gives you the authority to get indignant and be like, no, dang it, you're gonna value me, right? I love that.
Exactly.
It's 2 letters in a word, but it really changes the tone. Okay, all right.
And there's also the thing that it does to the person who hears it, who has power in that situation, right? Because underrepresented, that just feels like a big thing that I can't change, right? Like, oh, there are not enough women in this boardroom. I by myself can't really do anything about that right now. But like when you hear underrecognized, that's a thing that you're like, well, I could recognize this person more. I could pay more attention to like what they're doing, right? So that's another part of why that tweak is so effective. Yeah.
This is a hack. Are you guys getting these hacks right now? Constellations and word changes, and we're just getting out of this. We're getting out of this. I love it. I love it. Let's go to the next question, and if we have, we'll circle back. So we're implementing these, right? We're gonna go find us a network of strong people that are gonna help support us and bring out our light. We're gonna start changing the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we refer to ourselves in company of other people, right? So as we start to do these things, what are some of the hurdles we're gonna face, and how can we overcome that?
Yeah.
Let's start with Dr. Farzana.
So the biggest hurdle we face, we have so much information. It's our brain, it's our neural path, so which we are working on. It is ourself because we have internalized the external influence, or what we call in scientific research term, social science research term, social conformity. We are conformed to our environment, our family, our community, our society, and our belief systems. And then the people we come across in our professions and industry and in our path to the development, they also have those social conformity, those mindset and ideas where the place of women is, what they should do, what they should work on. So those are the hurdles which even come into the sophisticated, innovative professions like technology, science, which is trying to bring us to the Mars and get to the moon in a day at some point, go take a flight and come back down. But hurdles are mindsets. And how you can overcome that, it is I'm sorry to inform you this, that it is a constant struggle and a constant challenge, but we have to implement it by talking about it, by continually working, reframing our own thinking, how we can break the barriers of social conformity first for ourselves, so that we don't call it a imposter syndrome or the imposer syndrome, however it has come to us, and continue to work on it and make others like us, like we have this panel we are talking about, talk among ourselves to validate that we are unrecognized, not underrepresented, that we have brains, we are not without competencies, and keep moving on it, and don't get stuck in the toxic environment and a toxic thought process or a toxic social conformity cloud around you.
Wow. So what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm wrong, but because we have been conditioned, because everyone else around us has been conditioned, it's causing this symptom of imposter syndrome. So in order for us to really undo it, it has to be something that we do on a every single day basis. It has to turn into the way that we live our lives. That it's not just something that you can, go to the gym one time and lose 10 pounds. Like, no, we have to change our diet. We have to, change our habits, everything. And so, I think I heard once, like, women were not in the workforce and we were let in, right? If we were let, whatever, right? I know, whatever. But we have to do the extra work, right? Because we're allowed to play their game. And so I think when we recognize that that kind of is the situation that we're in, it gives us permission, like Dr. Farzana is saying, to spend the time and the energy to focus and reframe how we think about ourselves, how we approach mentorship, how we approach ourselves as professionals. Because if we're just ignoring it and not actively working on it, the society is going to continue to condition us. We have to continuously and consistently uncondition and work against it. It is the burden that we face as women, along with all the other ones. But I think that this is something that we can't stay quiet about, right? So Dr. Farzana, you had one more.
I just want to add one sentence to it. Listening to you, Malia, we are on a collective pursuit of mindset transformation. And understand the word collective. It's not just an onus on women. It is an onus on society and all genders. This is not genderism. This is about how we can advance our society from this point forward.
Absolutely. Oh, this is such a good conversation. Okay, Chloe, let us know, because this is difficult. It's difficult work that we're doing, right? So tell us, what are some of the hurdles that we're going to face and how can we overcome them?
Yeah, so I think this is a really good time to bring in the idea of like what imposter syndrome actually is. From a behavioral standpoint, imposter syndrome is just your mind and your body trying to keep you safe from the cues that it's picking up on in the environment around you, right? And so what I say that to say that the barriers that you face are actual, real, concrete things in your environment, right? So I tend to call these visibility biases, right? So the collection of cognitive biases that talk about how we've been conditioned to overlook certain people and certain experiences. And then I also call them invisibility taxes, right? So the extra bit of time or energy or money that we as under-recognized leaders are asked by society to pay in order to be as visible as our peers who have more privilege, right? So those are the things that you're up against. That's what you're facing, right? A really good example of an invisibility tax is the ambition penalty. Okay, and that's a term that was coined by Stephanie O'Connell Rodriguez, right? that you are penalized for your ambition. That's a real thing, right? And that's the kind of thing in your environment that your body and your mind are reacting to. So in terms of what you can do about those kinds of hurdles, there's a lot, but I'll give you one simple thing. And it's this: pay attention to your resources. Okay? As a human being, you have the resources of time, energy, and money. Pay attention to the levels as far as those resources are concerned. A really good cue that you're being overextended or you're being asked to give more of those resources than likely you should be is any feelings of resentment that you have. I would also look up the Superwoman schema to learn more about the physiological things that happen in your body when you're overextended in this way. But keep an eye on those resources so that you can head off any intense strain on them, and you can start leveraging them to do the things that we told you about in the last question when we were talking about building up your network and using it to recognize and all of that, right? So that's what I'd say.
I love that, because I think we wait until we feel the fear, we feel the worry, we feel the sweat in our armpit. Like, we wait until we feel the reaction to pay attention to how we're feeling. But you're saying also, like Dr. Farzana, we have to be proactive in this. And so when you're paying attention to your energy, your resources, what you bring to the table, you can then choose, okay, this is going to work for me. This is where I want to move forward. And I might feel the fear, but I'm going to just bring it along with me. It doesn't get to drive the boat. It doesn't get to drive the ship. It just gets to come along for us. So exactly. I think that as women, we, men, or the society tells us we're extra emotional. And so as we step into professions, we try and shed ourselves of those feminine qualities. But it's important. It's important to be aware of your emotions and your body and how you're feeling, your energy, especially around your cycle time, right? So like all of those things, I think these are great takeaways. I think these are going to really help free somebody and give them the permission to say, you know what, world, you're tripping. I'm great. And I'm going to do all the things necessary each and every day to move me out of this fear that I am inadequate. Thank you so much, Dr. Farzana and Chloé, today for being here and busting the myth about imposter syndrome. It is really just about them. It's not about you. And we're going to work through it. Again, you guys, if you enjoyed today, I ask that you fill out the summit survey. Let us know how we're doing. We're here to serve you. And also you will get replays for all of the days. So if you did not make yesterday, or you're not going to be able to make one of the other days, be sure to fill out this survey. Look in the chat, look on the screen. There should be links all over the place. Make sure you fill out that survey and let us know how we're doing. And we'll be happy to send you replays for all of this. And we're looking in the comments. I see some comments saying that they want a full imposter syndrome workshop. So we're going to add that to our list of things to do. But honestly, this has been such a refreshing conversation that needs to be had more and more. So I thank you both for having the confidence to come up here and say, we're not falling for the myth anymore. We're going to build our network. We're going to build our habits. We're going to really look inside of ourselves and pull out that value. And I'm just so grateful for you both. Thank you for being part of this panel. She has infinite potential. We'll be back tomorrow for day 3 of our 5-day summit. And until next time, guys, ship it. Did we decide? I think we decided on ship it.
I like ship it. Yeah. Remember to ship it, like something.
Thank you all. Yes.
Thank you.